you ever wondered how historians know what happened in the past? Not just the epic battles and famous leaders, but the everyday hopes, fears, and voices of people who lived it? In this episode of Hands-On History, we will dig deeper into personal writings, like diaries, letters, and journals, that help us discover voices from the past. We will also explore how to read between the lines and analyze these personal accounts to uncover the stories they tell and don't tell. Historians rely on primary sources, original documents, works of art, or physical objects, the material culture created during the time they are studying. Like time capsules, these give us evidence and insight into what life was like in the past. Letters, diaries, and journals are some of the most personal and revealing primary sources we have. They aren't just facts and dates. They capture experiences and emotions, and allow us to connect with individuals in ways that official records as primary sources and textbooks as secondary sources cannot. Imagine reading the private thoughts of someone who lived centuries ago and relating to their hopes, fears, and challenges, even their successes. Those personal connections are priceless, and with the help of historians, these conversations can span across centuries. Personal writings also give us a chance to hear voices we might otherwise not know. Voices of ordinary people, not just kings or generals. Take Richard Frethorn, for example, a young indentured servant living at Martin's Hundred near Jamestown. In letters he sent home, he describes the brutal realities of life in the young colony: hunger, difficult conditions, and an intense desire to return home to England. He wrote,
"And I have nothing to comfort me, nor is there nothing to be gotten here but sickness and death, except that one had money to lay out in some things for profit. But I have nothing at all, no, not a shirt on my back but 2 rags, nor clothes but 1 poor suit, nor but 1 pair of shoes, but 1 pair of stockings, but 1 cap, but 2 bands. My cloak is stolen by one of my fellows, and to his dying hour would not tell me what he did with it. But some of my fellows saw him have butter and beef out of a ship, which my cloak, I doubt, paid for."
Richard's words are haunting, raw, and painfully real. Remarkably, his letters survived, tucked away with the family of Robert Rich, Earl of Warwick, who preserved them as evidence of the mismanagement of the Virginia Company. 400 years later, readers connect with his desperation and imagine his distraught and disheveled appearance based on his descriptive writings. But did his parents ever read those letters? Did he truly write them, or did someone help him? And what happened to Richard? Then there was John Clark, who was captured near Fort Algernon, southeast of Jamestown, by the Spanish shortly after his arrival. He was taken first to Havana, Cuba, and then to Madrid, Spain, where he was held hostage for 4 to 5 years. During his captivity, he gave 2 interviews that were later discovered in the Spanish archives and published in the 1930s. In 1613, his interrogators reported,
being asked how many houses there were in the place called Jacobus, and what sort, and what soldiers, and what artillery, he said there are about 100 wooden houses, and in them, and in the other places that he has mentioned, about 1,000 men capable of bearing arms, what with traders, and soldiers, and labourers, and 30 women, and that the place is fortified with palisades in the form mentioned, and probably has about 16 pieces of artillery.
In both his 1611 and 1613 depositions, Clark gave descriptions of fortifications and artillery. His accounts served as important intelligence gathering for the Spanish. Preserved across languages and centuries, they are still important for us today because of the very few descriptions of such surviving. And then, we do have to ask, with Clark's short time in Virginia, how much did he really know? Might he have gained by offering misinformation to the Spanish? And don't forget George Percy, who wrote detailed observations of the highs and lows of the colonists' arrival in Jamestown in the spring of 1607. On May the 4th, he describes meeting the Werewants, or leader of the Paspahegh, where they entertained us with much welcome. Walking in the woods on May 19th, Percy described the landscape.
The ground all flowering over with fair flowers of sundry colours and kinds, as though it had been in any garden or orchard in England. There be many strawberries and other fruits unknown. We saw the woods full of cedar and cypress trees, with other trees which issues out sweet gums like to balsam. We kept on our way in this paradise.
Just a few short months later, paradise seemed lost. Percy began recording the dead and dying, giving us a vivid glimpse into the sweltering and tension-filled first summer of 1607, writing,
The 6th of August there died John Asby of the bloody flux. The 9th day died George Flower of the swelling. Our men were destroyed with cruel diseases as swellings, fluxes, burning fevers, and by wars. And some departed suddenly, but for the most part they died of mere famine. There were never any Englishmen left in a foreign country in such misery as we were in this new discovered Virginia.
His writings weren't published until 1922, hidden in time until their eventual release revealed a wealth of historical insight. These personal writings, often overlooked or lost for generations, give us a deeper, more human understanding of history, allowing us to hear the voices of those who lived it. So how do we read these sources critically? Historians ask important questions to understand them better. Who wrote it? Was it someone who experienced the event, or someone retelling it later? When did they write it? What was the historical context of the time? What was happening in their world? Who were they writing to, and why? Were they writing for themselves, for a friend, or for a public audience? What did they include? And what's missing? What message were they trying to send? What details might be left out? Are they reliable? Could the writer have been biased or lack knowledge on the subject? How were the items preserved, and why? Did it survive for a specific reason? When and why was it published? And perhaps most importantly, what questions does it raise? Every document opens a doorway to deeper exploration. By thinking critically about these sources, we bring context and clarity to each text and uncover deeper truths. But personal accounts have limits as historical evidence. Think about it. What would you leave out of a diary, postcard, or text? Maybe you would skip the embarrassing stuff, or details that seem boring or too personal. People in the past did the same thing. We rarely hear about topics like hygiene or time spent aboard crowded ships, even though those are topics historians would love to hear about. Writers told the story they wanted to tell, or what they wanted their reader to hear. These gaps remind us that personal texts, while valuable, offer only a partial view of history. And because literacy wasn't universal, many people were not able to record their personal thoughts and experiences at all. So what about the individuals who didn't write letters or keep diaries? For example, we hear little directly from important early 17th century figures like Anne Burras, Pocahontas, Anthony and Mary Johnson. Though written about by others, they will never tell their own story. Their personal thoughts have been lost to history, but their stories matter just as much. And through the right historical research, their voices can be heard too. We can turn to other types of primary sources, such as court records, where people might be mentioned for crimes or disputes, census and muster rolls, which can tell us about a person's life, family, property, and occupation. Oral histories, which are stories passed down through generations. These are important parts of history keeping in indigenous or African cultures. Art and archaeological evidence like pottery, tools, or buildings that can tell us how people lived. Here's the big takeaway. Your story matters. You have a unique perspective. Your diary, email, or social media post could one day become a priceless artifact for a future family member or historian, a decade or even centuries from now. Your voice holds the potential to help future generations understand what it truly meant to live in this time. So write, reflect, record, because every voice, whether from the distant past to now, has the power to shape our understanding of history.